Rivian has achieved an amazing feat of engineering. I've done videos on the past speculating on which company would achieve this milestone first, and it appears that my predictions also just so happen to be correct because Rivian is the first electric pickup truck manufacturer to actually get an EPA rated range of over 400 miles, okay? We've seen other EVs on the road exceed 500 miles, like the Lucid Air, and maybe we've seen some Tesla semi-trucks exceed 400 or 500 miles of range, but when it comes to an actual in-production vehicle on the road that has been certified range tested by the EPA, this beats the Silverado, this beats the Cybertruck technically. The dual motor R1T with the max battery pack hit 410 miles on the EPA test cycle. Now, you do have to make sure it's with 21-inch wheels though, because if you start speccing it with any kind of larger tire or better for off-roading tires, you will quickly see that range diminish to 380, maybe even 350 miles. So yeah, tires, honestly, they make quite the noticeable difference. But unfortunately, I'm here today to congratulate Rivian on that amazing milestone and also try to warn everybody out there that you should not buy this pickup truck, in my opinion, under any circumstances. I don't really care what the use case of your pickup truck is. Yes, I'm going to talk about cold weather and towing and all of that. In fact, if you're towing with your pickup truck, the max pack probably even makes less financial sense because of how much more expensive it is. This is a $10,000 add-on, which essentially is just going to be boosting the number of kilowatt hours in your battery pack from about 135 to now up to close to 180. We don't have the exact measurements, but this is in part thanks to the new Rivian in-house designed enduro motors, which is why, in case you're wondering, the max pack is only available with the dual motor powertrain. But the main reason I don't think you should get the max pack is because how insanely good the large battery pack is, and on top of that, the fact that Rivian did not change much of the charging chemistry or the charging curve with the max battery pack. There's no changes to the high voltage architecture as well, which means that on a road trip, or if you're towing with the R1T with the max battery pack, the actual trip time is genuinely not going to change all that much. So for one, like, yes, it's great. It's so cool that you got a battery pack to go over 400 miles on a charge. A lot of people said that would never happen, and it's cool that there's a pickup truck that is actually capable of doing that. But I think humans have this fundamental flaw where we put these invisible barriers in our head, and we just like seeing that number by the 100 mark go up by a higher degree. Like, okay, 300 miles of range, yeah, it's pretty good, but could it be better? Oh, 400! And then our minds are like, whoa, okay, 400 miles, wow, I guess that's plenty. But we don't think about the fact that most of the time that battery pack is not being charged to 100%, especially when you're road tripping. The charging speed of that battery pack is going to taper off the higher and higher you get. And honestly, at the end of the day, if you just look at the ranges between the large battery pack and the max, they're genuinely not that different, because with the large battery pack, which is $10,000 cheaper, assuming you go with the dual motor powertrain, which I absolutely recommend. Quad motor is cool, but extremely overkill in my opinion, and very few people actually need quad motor. So if you're on the fence, you definitely can live with dual motor. Still insanely fast, still great at off-roading. There's just a few edge cases where quad motor is a little bit better, but if you know you need quad motor, you're not listening to me. You're gonna buy whatever you want. So honestly, the one to get, which is just now starting to come out, it's just showing up on Rivian's inventory page, is the large battery pack with 2 motors, because that still gets you over 350 miles of range. We're talking about a difference of 50 miles of range between an R1T with the large pack versus max pack, and yet there's $10,000 between these two trims. And because both of them have the same charging curve capabilities, as in they both peak at about 220 kilowatts, which is pretty good for an EV these days, but when you consider the size of the battery pack, it's honestly like kind of slow. It's not the worst, it's not F-150 Lightning slow, but like knowing that there's Tesla Model 3s and Ys out there that can do 250 kilowatts, and that's with like a, 70, 80 kilowatt hour battery pack, and these Rivians are almost twice that. In the case of the max battery pack, we're talking 180 kilowatt hours with a peak of 220 kilowatts, and couple that with some of the charging overheating issues Rivians have been known to have. Like, basically what I'm trying to say is they don't maintain that charge speed for very long. Not as long as they should, considering how massive these battery packs are, and because of that limitation with the charging curve, that's going to affect your road trip time a heck of a lot more than your maximum range number. And most people who are interested in these higher range numbers are bringing up the use cases of, well, I need to tow more with my pickup truck, or I'm driving it around in the winter and that's when my range gets cut in half. Well, okay, thank you, great for bringing that up, because that makes the range range difference even less noticeable, okay? We're talking about if the range gets cut in half because you're towing or in the cold weather, 25 miles of range difference, and yet you're paying $10,000 more for that extra 25 miles, and assuming that's you're getting the most efficient tires possible. If you end up speccing up the tires a little bit more on the max battery pack, yeah, we're talking about maybe even less than 20 miles of range difference between these two trims. Basically no difference in regards to charging characteristics as well, which in my opinion is far more important. And if you don't trust me because I'm not technically a Rivian owner, I highly recommend you check out the more recent episode of the Out of Spec podcast where Kyle Connor, who has done probably more towing with a Rivian R1T than anybody out there, can attest that the charging curve is by far the much bigger issue with the Rivian than the max range figure. Rivian Stories has some great podcasts and episodes that dive into this as well. So if you don't trust me, at least trust the owners, like those guys who have actually used these trucks for work. And honestly, I would love to sit down with RJ and ask specifically, like, why do you guys like make this option? Like, I think it's mostly PR, to be honest with you guys. Like, they're probably going to have some thicker margins on that max battery pack, and there's probably some of you out there that are going to dismiss this video or dismiss other people's advice against you, and you're just gonna say, well, you know what? I want more range. I don't care what they say. I don't care about the charging curve. I don't care about the large battery pack being insanely similar in terms of range. I don't care about all that. I just want a truck that has over 400 miles of range. I just need to check that magical box in my head so that I can justify this purchase, and Rivian will make a lot of money off of those people. And I suppose there probably is some demand for it, but as a EV customer, as someone who has to give kind of buyer's advice, I just cannot recommend it really to anybody, especially because Rivian right now is still going to be somewhat dependent on Electrify America. Their adventure network is great, but it's not expanded to the point where you can only charge with the adventure network for all your road trip needs. So hopefully Tesla superchargers are able to come in clutch and help out the Rivian, but still, even with those Magic Dock chargers, and even when Rivian gets access to some adapter for NACS and they can access V3 superchargers, they're probably still not going to have that great of a charging curve because of the amperage limitations of superchargers when plugging into non-Teslas. And there's a lot of situations that I can attest to when I road trip in my EV where it's like, okay, well, maybe someone else has 20 or 30 miles more range than me, but if the charging stops are spaced out in such a way, it's like, okay, you could die when you're 10 miles away from the charger, or you could die when you're 30 miles away from the charger. But at the end of the day, you still need to charge up to a certain percentage. So if your charging curve isn't that good, it actually doesn't matter whether you have 410 miles of range or 350 miles of range, because you're going to be stuck at that one charger until you reach a certain state of charge. So if the max battery pack came with some charging advantages like a higher voltage architecture, or maybe at least a higher peak speed, which doesn't really matter all that much in my head, or a better charging curve, then it would be easier, I guess, to justify that $10,000 add-on. But truthfully, because they're not really doing anything with the max battery pack other than just increasing the energy on the inside, and that's it. Yeah, I genuinely, like, I don't really care what your use case is. I can't recommend it to anybody. Like, the large pack is just so good. It's so much cheaper, and on road trips, it's really going to make a negligible difference. Anybody who's done EV road tripping can attest that having an extra 20 miles of range is not going to make or break that trip. It's really just going to change the arrival SOC. You might arrive with 5% with the large battery pack, and you might arrive with 10% with the max battery pack. But at the end of the day, you're still going to stop, and you're still going to be plugged in. And with the max pack, probably waiting longer because it's going to take a while to charge up that massive, massive battery pack. Rivian's got a lot of stuff going on right now. Maybe that's why they're not willing to tackle a higher voltage architecture at this time. But if you're interested in buying one in the future, which I don't blame you at all, by the way, I think the Rivian is kind of the coolest pickup truck on the market right now. For one, I'd be waiting for NACS adoption. I wouldn't want to be stuck with an adapter for the rest of the vehicle's life. But also, I'd be waiting out for that LFP battery pack, because that's coming out later in next year, and that's going to let you charge to 100% more frequently. We don't know too much about the charging curve, but it should save you money and be cheaper instead of cost $10,000 more than the large battery pack. And still, 270 miles of range is great. It'll be perfect for driving around town, and when you're road tripping, you're probably going to be ready to stop anyway. I've had an amazing experience with my LFP Model 3 and its charging curves, and being able to charge to 100% every single day is just amazing. It feels so much easier to not have to think about charge limits, and knowing how little degradation there is with that battery pack, and knowing it can save you money. That, in my opinion, is the one to wait for. before, and I know I'm not alone in that recommendation, but if I was Rivian, honestly, I would probably not be wasting too much time with the max battery pack, because I get the feeling the word about how it doesn't result in that much of a real world difference, it doesn't result in a faster trip time, that's probably going to spread pretty quickly. They might make some quick profits when they first launch it, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a better charging curve or a higher voltage architecture, I don't think that extra range is going to matter all that much. But do you disagree with me? Feel free to let me know why down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.